you ever wondered how investors with 8-figure portfolios actually make an offer on a property?
Our goal as buyers is to get the best price. That's always the bottom line.
This episode, using an actual offer form, we're going through the detail with property investor and founder of House Finder, Simon Loo.
This is standard contract of sale. You got the selling agent, you got the seller. This part is usually filled out. $600,000 will buy the house. When it comes to pen on paper, I try to change that to $595 or something. There is nothing more infuriating.
Walking you through what is sometimes a nerve-wracking process to highlight what you should be doing and what you should never be doing when you're trying to put together a deal.
If I want to buy something, whether it's a house or anything, I want to make it happen like immediately. One of the things I try and advise people to do is in the spirit of not wasting the selling agent's time.
If you like a more practical, step-by-step style episode of walking you through something that could literally be the difference between securing a deal and walking away empty-handed, you're going to enjoy this episode. My name's Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast, and this episode is powered by Property Developer Network, House Finder, and Suburbs Finder. More about our amazing show sponsors in the show notes below. But right now, let's start talking offers. Let's start talking details, and let's find out how one of Australia's most successful property investors actually makes an offer on a property. Simon Loo, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. Pumped and ready to go for this one.
I'm going to make an offer on some properties today.
Yeah, man.
Or a property today.
And it's not just a normal offer. Mm-hmm. Whilst there's obviously a lot of similarities between making an offer and making an undermarket offer, there's a few that you're going to pull apart in here that really need to be, I suppose, adhered to if you're actually going to have a chance of your undermarket offer potentially being accepted.
Yeah.
But before we get into all the details, which realistically, we're going to be talking about info to gather and actually making the offer, and you've got a contract here that we're going to be pulling apart, and also a bit of what not to say. Is there anything that you want to kind of set the stage with though before we jump into it?
Before you even see this document called a contract of sale, you should have been verbally negotiating with the agent already to solidify the price, obviously, and also the terms and the conditions.
Okay.
In other videos that I've done, we talk about negotiating and try and get the best price and how to do that with the best conditions. The core of it is to make it as juicy and as easy for the selling agent as possible. Our goal as buyers is to get the best price. That's always the bottom line. But in order to do that, we need to not only make sure we minimize the amount of pain the seller and the agent has to go through to accept that price, but we also need to create a facade or a impression that we're not here to waste time.
Talk me through a little bit of the information you'd gather and the way that you do it. So you are coming across as, I'm here to do business.
Simple as asking questions. What would it take? I always ask that.
What would it take? Okay.
Yeah, 100%. You know,
what would it take to buy it?
Yeah, well, you know, if let's say you're talking about a property, and especially an off-market property, a lot of off-market properties are, you know, about to come on market, or they're preparing to come on market, or maybe the seller's umming and ahhing about putting on a market. So your job is to find out what it would take for them to not to do that and for you to be able to buy it today. Very common question I always ask is, what would it take, Mr. Agent, for me to buy the house today? What would it take? What do you mean, Simon? Price. How much does it need to be? Are there any conditions? What's the seller's situation? Do they need to move somewhere very quickly? Do they need a shorter settlement? Are they a very motivated seller, meaning they can't waste time, right? If they can't waste time, maybe if I have the ability to not have a finance condition, because in certain states, having a finance condition could mean that you could terminate the contract at any point in time during that condition period. So effectively, you have the potential to waste that amount of time for the seller to not be able to sell that house to someone else.
2 weeks or something they've just lost.
Yeah, 14 days is a very common one. So all these little things you're asking, by asking these questions, you're also creating that facade or that impression that you're not a time waster as well. Because to the agent, he's thinking, okay, cool, this guy actually knows what he's doing. He's not just like a regular buyer trying to find out whether the condition of the house is good or anything as yet. That comes later. He's just trying to lock in the deal, get the seller across the line, and it could be an opportunity for me to make some commission quickly.
So you're not talking about confidence from like a charismatic point of view. You're talking about confidence from just a straight to the point, nice and firm, like for what you want, you're clear. So there's no like wishy-washiness in the way that you talk.
No wishy-washiness, but it goes hand in hand, right? You can't project that if you're not confident in terms of the way you ask things or the way you project yourself anyway. I think the substance is way more important than how you're perceived. When you ask these questions, don't ask things like, oh, you know, can I get early access, or can I get chattels and all those kinds of things to be put in? And, you know, just keep it really, really simple. You know, all that stuff can actually be added later on if you've got the right few conditions that you just need to get the deal across the line. If you start to put all this stuff in immediately because there's no commitment yet, you're just some guy. you're going to be put in the too hard basket.
Something you and I were talking about off air just a little bit before was some of the differences with WA as well. And I know we're about to go through a Queensland contract.
Yep.
You actually touched on one that I thought was really good to actually open up here, because whilst this is definitely leaning into the details of making under-market offers, if you're just wanting to learn how to make an offer, this is actually still going to be super valuable.
Yeah.
But can you open up a little bit more about that when it comes to the information gathering stage and how state dependent that can be?
Yeah, look, every single state in Australia has different laws, different contracts, different rules, different regulations. Like in Queensland, I'm going to use the finance clause as an example. Actually, maybe not. Maybe I'll use the building and pest clause as an example. In Queensland, if you've got a building and pest clause and you do the building and pest and the building and pest comes back rubbish, there's a lot of problems, especially major structural defects. You can terminate, walk away, you get your money back, no dramas. In WA, you're not allowed to do that. If you do the building and pest and you come up with all these major structural defects, the seller has the right to fix whatever's broken first. If they decide not to, then you can either terminate the contract or maybe negotiate a price reduction. So the power's with the seller in WA.
If you're a buyer that's used to buying in South Australia, Victoria, Queensland, and all of a sudden you're going over the border into WA thinking, it's cool, I've got my BMP clause here, I'm protected.
Yeah. So you have to be very familiar with the little nuances. Speak to your conveyancer, your solicitor. And by the way, in WA, they don't have conveyancers. They're called settlement agents. And you need a specific license to work in that state.
Settlement agent. It's like a sandwich artist. It's just like, why change the name?
I ask the question all the time. I don't know why, but whatever, they do things their way.
It's a bit different. But anyway.
But yeah, very, very important to familiarize yourself before you even start making offers.
Yep.
Because the other thing I really wanted to talk about when you make an offer is you need to know what you're talking about. To be able to say, I want this price, I want finance condition, I want building and pest condition. One of the things I try and advise people to do is in the spirit of not wasting the selling agent's time, whatever you negotiate verbally, you should always stick to afterwards. So the worst thing for an agent is if let's say I'm negotiating a property with you and we go, okay, cool, $600,000 will buy the house. And then when it comes to pen on paper, I try to change that to $595 or something. There is nothing more infuriating.
Well, you've broken the trust.
You've broken the trust, and immediately they're going to be like, you know what, I don't want to deal with you anymore. You know, so it's really important to show the agent respect, but more importantly, maybe allow them to maintain their credibility and their relationship with their seller as well.
Because that's the thing that no one really sees. But when the selling agent is sitting across the dinner table, and it's normally done at the dinner table with the vendor, like if all of a sudden you've got this buyer and everything's good and it's off market and then it falls apart, you might be able to repair that credibility. But if that was to happen twice, they're looking for another agent.
Even the first time. Think about it, like the vendor or the seller to the agent is the way they make money.
Yeah.
Right? So their job is to make sure that the seller still holds this selling agent to a professional or as someone that's going to be able to sell their home effectively. So if they rock up to the dinner table and say, hey, here's an offer. If you sign here, we're going to get it done. And then they sign there. And then they have to call the agent back because the buyer changed things around or stuffed around. They're going to look like an idiot at the end of the day. So to avoid that, I think is very important just to be very upfront, have a mutual respect for their profession and their livelihood as well, but also make sure that you're
sticking to your word.
Sticking to your word.
Yeah. All right, can we start pulling apart this offer as well? Because, and something I want you to touch on before you start filling it out is letter of offer versus contract, because you're jumping straight to contract here.
Yeah, no emails, letter of offers. Look, some agents demand that you put in a letter of offer. I don't know why, but for me, if I want to buy something, whether it's a house or anything, you know, I want to make it happen like immediately, right? I just feel like it's an unnecessary step. It holds no weight legally if you put in like a letter of offer or an email or something. And I don't understand why agents even entertain it, because it takes me literally 10 seconds to type an email. Hey, here's the price I want to pay. But if they're like, okay, cool, offer's been verbally accepted, it means nothing, you know? So
and that's something I think people need to understand as well. Being verbally accepted, it does mean nothing.
It means nothing. And also when you put in paper, it's just real. If the agent presents this piece of paper to the seller and the seller uses a pen and signs at the bottom, then it's done. It's a contract. It's binding. Not only does it make it more attractive for the agent, because again, you're reinforcing the fact that you're serious, it also makes it easier for the selling agent to convince the seller to take the offer.
It's very different sitting down with a vendor and having here's all of this intention versus sign here, press hard, it's all done.
Yeah, absolutely. What I used to do as well, it's not a very common practice, is pay deposit. I would be like, as part of this contract, I send $5,000 or $10,000, whatever the deposit is, to the trust account of the agent. So the money's sitting there. That's an extra level of commitment. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because very few people would spend, like, you know, if you understand how it works, unless they signed, you get the money back anyway. It's just kind of like, okay, cool, this guy's real. He's just transferred 5 or 10 grand without me even having to ask. So yeah.
You say used to, like, why is that? Because to me, that's something that really shows like I'm serious.
Well, back in the old days, I'm kind of showing my age here. When we used to make offers, you would have a checkbook.
Yeah, not a stone and chisel.
No. That's your age, not mine. But we used to have a checkbook, and you used to attach a check of whatever the deposit is to the physical contract, and you walk into the agent's office, you sign it, and you give it to the agent. Agent gives it to the seller to sign. The equivalent of that today would be to transfer money into the bank account. And I think why it's not done often is because it's just a lot less efficient. Because nowadays, with properties that are online in particular, I dare say agents get a lot more offers.
Yeah, so especially in the hot market.
Yeah. So imagine if you have an agent and you've got 10 buyers signing these contracts.
And also,
putting money in trust accounts. They have to refund everything, and there's a process there, blah, blah, blah. So probably it's not as
would actually be really annoying.
As effect, yeah. But for off-market properties, I would just ask them as per any other question. Hey, do you want me to send you a deposit?
Because even if you don't do it, just being like, hey, I'm willing to do this right now.
Yeah, I can send you a deposit right now. What's your bank details? Yeah. If there's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Let me talk to the seller first, and then once they accept, then we'll do it. Again, you're kind of like reinforcing that. So yeah. So this is standard contract of sale. It's a Queensland contract. All the Queensland contracts pretty much look like this. They're kind of standard documents from the Real Estate Institute of Queensland, and they're typically 16 pages.
Okay.
Right? So this bit, you got the selling agent, you got the seller. This part is usually filled out, right? Okay. But obviously we're not looking at a property, so it's a completely blank contract. So your job is just to make sure all this stuff is correct. The seller's details are correct.
Also making sure that if you're going to buy this in a company or a trust or your own name, making sure that that's all correct from the beginning as well.
No, this is just the seller stuff. So this is purely seller, the seller's information.
I'm trying to read this upside down. No, I completely missed you. Yeah. Okay. So probably don't worry about that then.
Yeah. You don't need to worry about it. Honestly, none of this stuff really affects you.
Yep.
The seller solicitor, again, it's just the solicitor that they're using. So this stuff you kind of just pretty much ignore.
Got it.
Right. On the next page, this is the stuff that you need to start filling out, right? So you got your buyer. So here I will do obviously Simon. Maybe I'll do this a little bit smaller. Simon Loo. You got your address, so you can add in your address wherever you live. Your phone number, your email. So my phone number 0415 626 342, and then your email, which is simon@housefinder.com.au. And buyer's agent you don't even need to fill that out. Buyer solicitor, obviously you will put your solicitor's details in there. I use a company called SMB Legal, which happens to be my company. Contact is Brian Fang. Sorry, my normal writing is actually a lot better than this, but because we're using on this this device called an iPad, it's something that I'm not used to because apparently I'm quite old.
Man, no one's got good handwriting on this thing. Don't feel bad, man. Feel good.
And then you got the address. Obviously, you fill in the address. I'm not going to fill it in because it's going to look absolutely.
So it could just be like. Oh, so that's not the address of the property.
That's the address of the solicitor.
The solicitor, right? Gotcha.
Solicitor, obviously the details, like filling a form at the car registration place, depending on what state you live in, whatever they call it. In New South Wales, Service New South Wales. You got the number, you got email, his email there. So this is just the solicitor's details, yeah?
Yep.
So the property, this is usually inputted as well by the agent.
Okay.
Right? Because it's got the address, the suburb. It's also got the description, the title reference, the lot numbers, all that kind of stuff. I would probably just double check this just to make sure you're buying the right property. You'd be surprised how many times the agents mistake or they send you the wrong contract.
There's one digit incorrect.
Yeah, there's something incorrect. And it's not the end of the world. Like it just gets adjusted later on. It's just inconvenient, right? So it just takes 2 seconds to check it. And by the way, caveat as well, unless you know what you're doing, just speak to your conveyancer, speak to your solicitor before you send this to the agent. As simple as a Queensland contract is, you probably want someone professional just to run their eyes over.
Just in case there's something.
You haven't stuffed up anything.
Makes sense.
So that's that section. Yeah, just got to check that. Now, on this part is the offer itself. So this is this section done. On this page is actually where we put in the offer details, right? So all this stuff I would typically ignore, right? I'm not a big fan of putting in chattels, like I mentioned before. It's just another stepping stone for the agent to deal with, right? The purpose is to make it as simple and quick as possible. And by the way, it's not because chattels don't matter. right? Sometimes you want to have the dishwashers and all that kind of stuff in. But because you're going to put in other conditions, which I'll explain soon, there's a chance or you have the opportunity to make sure they're included down the track, right, without risk to you.
Gotcha, but lock it up first.
Lock it up first,
Yep.
keep it simple. So this section is the most important section, which is the price. So let's say you negotiated the price to be $600,000. Obviously, you're right, $600,000 in here. Now, the deposit, I always put $5,000. Right, I've never had any pushback from that. I don't do 5% or 10% or anything like that. $5,000, especially in Queensland, is, in my experience, widely accepted by agents as enough money to secure a property.
You say you've never had any pushback on that? Is that like, because
Yeah, very rarely.
Yeah?
I've never, because it's more just like a commitment. You know what I mean? It's not like, then obviously they know the deposit is going to be more.
Okay, so
especially that settlement.
If someone does get a bit of pushback on it, what do? Do you just kind of gloss over it? Like, yeah, hey, this is how I've always done it. Like,
Well, it depends how much money you have sitting in your bank account, obviously. But if they're like, you know what, Simon, can you do $10,000 instead? No worries. Yeah, I'll put $10,000 in.
Okay.
You know, so
there is a bit of flexibility there, but you always just like sort of assume it's 5, start with 5.
just for ease.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, because I do so many of these, or our team does so many of these, that it's just swift.
Yep.
And the fact also, the little nuance that you're not asking about it, again, tells the agent that
This
you know
is
what you're
what I
doing.
do. Yeah.
So, $5,000,
Yep.
initial deposit payable on the day that it's signed. And then here on the second bit, I would usually put $10,000. So this is a second part of the deposit when the balance deposit is payable on, you write here, unconditional contract. Sorry, usually it would be a lot smaller. Words.
Again, this is coming back to what you were saying before about the nuances between states as well, because it doesn't work like this in every state.
Correct, yeah. But in Queensland, when you buy the property, you put a deposit. When the contract goes unconditional, meaning all the conditions and everything has been waived, you typically have to pay another deposit. And then at settlement, you pay the balance deposit, which is based on how much money you're actually putting in versus how much you're borrowing. And the lawyer or the conveyancer will work that out for you just before settlement.
Makes sense?
And yeah, that's all you need to do in this section. Now, the finance, this is where you put in the finance condition. So finance amount, what I would write here instead of, because at this stage, you may not know the specific number. So all I would usually write is sufficient to complete. So this section, sufficient to complete, that's basically, if enough money to purchase the property. For the financier, you may not know at this point what bank you're going with. So what I would always write is just buyer's choice, meaning you can choose whoever bank you want to go with. As the
Makes
financier.
sense. Yep.
And the finance date. So I always put in 14 days because 14 days from contract date.
And that's from contract date as far as being fully executed?
Correct. So once you and the seller signs, this section here gets dated and that's when the contract begins.
Got it.
So 14 days from contract date, that's 2 weeks. That's really standard and usually sufficient enough for anyone to get their finance formally approved. If you do need a bit longer, you can request to extend, right? I usually do this at the very last second, so at 13 days, let's say. You can extend for however long you need, a week or whatever.
Yep.
Obviously, the seller needs to accept. But at that point, most sellers would just agree to it unless they had seller's remorse or something like that.
Yeah. Because they're already so invested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, if you need a couple of days, it's generally accepted that you can extend it. If you can't and you still want to proceed, then you kind of run the risk of only the seller terminating on your contract. Down here, you've got your building and pest. Typically, I would put 14 days as well from contract date, and that gives you 2 weeks to do your building and pest.
And again, like you were saying, very different state to state.
Yeah, different state to state. Look, in WA, typically you get 21 days because very quickly, with Queensland, if you do a building and pest inspection, and if you don't like what you see, like a major structural defect or something like that, you can terminate the contract and there's no cost to you. In a state like WA, you can't actually terminate the contract. If you have your building and pest inspection and you come up with all these major structural defects, the seller has the option to fix those issues, So I think we kind of...
And it's only if they refuse that you can then walk away. Is that right?
If they refuse, you can either walk away or you can negotiate maybe like a price reduction or something. But the initial power is with the seller.
Yep.
So that's never an ideal thing. But in Queensland, with the finance and the building and pest, if you wanted to terminate, it's a lot more relaxed. You can typically terminate and there's no cost to you. You get your deposit refunded. So that's what I meant earlier in putting all these chattels. You have 14 days. So let's say we do the building and pest and the building and pest comes back reasonably okay, you can say, okay, cool, I'm happy with the building and pest. There's a few things, but I'm only going to waive it or go ahead, or I'm happy to proceed if the dishwasher and all this stuff is thrown in. And then you can go, the seller will be like, okay, cool, that's fine. Okay, cool, let's add it into chattels and the solicitor can sort that out afterwards.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. And then that's it for this section.
All right, so looking at this so far, what's the difference? This is the first thing that comes to mind is between filling this out now just as making an offer and filling it out to make an under market offer with a better chance of actually being accepted.
Well, the difference is all this has already been negotiated. You know, you've already spoken to the agent and it's all kind of all verbally agreed to, but really just putting it on paper so that it's real, you know. From verbal to real is a big difference.
Okay, so where you see people go wrong is making it on a letter of offer instead of a contract.
Yeah.
And not actually having everything out in the open and actually discussing it, agreeing on it first. It's just kind of like sending it through in an email.
Correct, yeah. Once you write all this stuff in and you sign it and the seller signs it, and then you pay a deposit, then it's done. You know, you're basically committed.
You're buying a house.
Committed to buying the property subject to these conditions. So yeah, this is this page, this section. Over here, if the property's tenanted, obviously tenant details, just make sure all that stuff is in there. The agent's in there as well. Pool safety, it does have a pool, electric safety switch. Most of the time, these are ticked as in like installed nowadays because of the new smoke alarm rules. None of this stuff really matters. I rarely look at this stuff, to be honest. Settlement date.
And this is stuff that your solicitor's going through and making sure they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's?
Well, Queensland is just a standard document. They all look like this. So really there's just some select boxes that you really have to fill in and also boxes that you need to check that the details are correct. If they are, then you're good. Special conditions. I don't do anything here. A lot of people make the mistake of writing all these fancy little conditions that they want or that their brother or their mum or their dad taught them to put in to stay protected, blah, blah, blah. I've got the finance condition. I've got the building and pest condition. If whatever I need afterwards and is a big thing and I'm not happy about it, I can theoretically still walk away from this property. So a little bit of a grey area. I'm not going to spell it out as to how people can do that. But in Queensland in particular, if you wanted to terminate a contract under finance or building and pest, there's not many hoops to jump through. Put it that way.
Whereas if you put all in here in black and white, you're going to look more difficult. There's going to be more like sort of moving parts that make your offer less attractive.
Yeah.
When there's potentially ways that you can already have the conditions that you've got that are pretty standard as a different form of protection.
Yeah, 100%.
Got it.
You know, so just to make it look clean, I just usually leave this part blank. Look, another caveat, if every house is different. Every situation is different. There's certain houses that definitely needs a special condition in place. Maybe if the house is like a knockdown rebuild or maybe like a development site or something, you may have certain conditions in here that's reflective of that. But we're talking just a normal house purchase. Generally, I leave it blank. Settlement dates, I usually do 42 days from contract date. But you know, sometimes as part of your negotiation, it might maybe having 30 days will be more favorable. And obviously if you can do that in 30 days after speaking to your broker, then that's something that the selling agent and yourself may have agreed to make the offer more juicy. And that's it. You sign it, buyer. You would typically initial every page as well. So you do SL and SL.
Just to be clear, don't write SL unless your initials are SL.
Yeah, correct. So initial all these sort of standard clauses as well. So yeah, initial every page and that's it, right? Sometimes I fill in this contract as I'm negotiating with the agent on the phone.
So then it's just like super
as
speedy.
As soon as I hang up, I'm almost ready to just send it to him. And then I send him a text message and go, hey, I just sent you the contract. And he's going to look at that and go, wait, hold on, I just spoke to you 30 seconds ago.
To me, that's the power in this. That you're not sitting on this for days. You're not even sitting on this for hours.
That's it. If you get the seller to sign this, you make 2% commission or whatever money you're going to make out of this sale. And here it is. One phone call, you know, I've got the conditions in place. By the way, I probably haven't seen this house physically, you know, but once we're in play, I'll send someone out during those condition periods. They'll look at it. And if I like, generally speaking, you know, if they like what they see and if there's no issues, then I proceed. But if not, then I still have avenues to protect myself.
Mate, whilst I know there's still a lot more to buying under market and off market, this to me is an amazing start to bring some clarity to one of the more nerve-wracking parts of it, which is actually putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
Now, understanding what to weight it up with, what to really go in for that's important as far as your conditions, what to just completely leave off. So it's not going to be something that's unattractive and really just waste your time and the vendor's time. But then also the speed of it, that last part, that's so easy for Simon to say. It's like, I'm usually doing this straight away and I'll send it straight through like minutes later.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the value of that, because that reaction from the agent, exactly like you just said, it's like, wasn't I just talking to Scarlett 2 minutes ago?
Yeah.
It's again coming back to the whole I'm quick, I'm fast, I'm mean business.
100%. Most people will be like, oh, let me run it by my lawyer, or let me sleep on it, let me talk to my wife or whatever. Yeah, you got to be serious. You got to be quick. Otherwise, they're just not going to take you seriously.
The thing that I like about this as well is it's very easy sometimes to look at like someone like yourself, the volume that you're buying, and it's like, oh, well, I can't say that because I don't buy that much, or I can't do that because I don't have that experience. It's like pretty much every single step that you've said in this is whether you're at 0 or you're at 100, it's like you can do that.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping someone just acting quicker.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people overthink this. They think, oh, this is it. I'm signing my life away. If you've got the right conditions in place, if you know what you do, if you know the laws in particular, you quickly realize that it's just the beginning of the entire journey. And there's still ways to not progress, or, especially if you find something that's not good, it's not like the end of the world.
Love it. Simon Loo from House Finder. This is a very good episode, man. I'm very happy you came on the show, dude.
Yeah, no, good to be here. Maybe we can do similar ones for different states in the future.
Make it a series.
Yeah, all good.